Finnish TV and toilet paper did as much to undermine the USSR as the nuclear deterrent, an Estonian friend once explained to me. He grew up in Tallinn, under Kremli rule but within antenna range of American soaps broadcast from Helsinki. What Dallas did for eyes that craved glamour, a smuggled supply of soft tissue did for bums rubbed raw by Soviet-issue bog roll. The Balts had too much exposure to what they were missing to be reconciled to the privations of communism. That feels like a long time ago because it was. The post-Cold War realignment has now lasted almost as long as the confrontation itself. The Berlin Wall has now been down for longer than it was up. The period is politically definitive for those who grew up in it, and strangely remote to those who came after. The generation that occupies most positions of power in Western countries has a crisp sense of what it means to be the West, but it is vaguer in their children and nebulous to their grandchildren. The term can be very problematic. It is too often used to conflate democracy, civilization and whiteness. But in the context of a strategic rivalry with Berlin as its epicenter, the West accurately described one side. So the label stuck. Measuring political virtue by longitude has also been given fresh impetus by Vladimir Putin's neo-Soviet statecraft and the emergence of populist governments in countries of the former Warsaw Pact. The power-hoarding habits of Poland's Law and Justice Party and Hungary's nationalist Prime Minister, Viktor Orbán, give some coherence to the idea of a liberal Western style. It means civil liberties upheld by independent courts, a free press, opposition parties unmolested by the state, and a credible prospect of incumbents losing power. But the lines are blurred by Polish and Hungarian membership of the EU. Their accession in 2004 was supposed to require the highest standards of political pluralism. The deal was liberal reform in exchange for promotion to the Economic Premier League. Transition was meant to be a one-way street. More established EU states are alarmed by Easterners sliding back to bad habits. As illiberal forces arise in democracy's heartlands, liberals find themselves frighteningly short of rhetorical tools. The European Commission can chasten members that don't uphold the EU's founding values, and has invoked the relevant treaty clause in response to Polish assaults on judicial independence. But withholding funds or suspension of summit voting rights, the available sanctions have not been deployed for fear of inflaming nationalist resentment and driving Warsaw further from the democratic fold. Meanwhile, Austria avoids equivalent censure despite the far-right Freedom Party joining its ruling coalition last month. When the same party, whose roots go back to the Nazi apparatus, joined the government in 2000, VIE was ostracized by fellow EU members. The charge was legitimizing extremism. The Freedom Party was then beyond the pale. The pale has moved. Heinz Christian Strack, the party's leader, now Austrian vice-chancellor, is not Eurosceptic in the style of Marine Le Pen or Nigel Farage. He nonetheless leads a party with an aggressive fixation on Islam, but Austria is a Western EU member, and that unofficial senior status seems to confer privileges in the club that survive having xenophobes in high office.